Welcome everybody, it's Dr. Adam here. We're out in the apiary today, it's mid-September. We're getting ready to shut these hives down, and I'm going to take you through today kind of a process that we go through here in our apiaries to make sure everybody's ready for winter. And we've talked about this in some of our other lectures, our overwintering lectures. Things like consolidating resources, making sure that the food's where it's supposed to be, right above the cluster. Also evaluating hive strength, making sure that those weak hives that have been kind of struggling all season, that we combine those with other hives, stronger hives or equal strength hives to make sure that we have hives strong enough to get through the winter. And then we're also going to be doing some final evaluations on Varroa, doing our final counts for the year here in the apiary in the month of September. I can tell you I've been working here the last couple days, kind of going through hives. This is kind of a time-intensive process as you're making these final decisions for the season. You can see there's some equipment lying around where we've consolidated some hives. You can see in the background here we've got some that have been combined using the newspaper combined, and so that's what we're working on today. And what I want to instill upon you, and I've said this in other lectures, is to make sure that when you are considering who is strong enough to make it through the winter, that you're not trying to really get those dinky hives through. Stronger hives have a much better ability to make it through winter. They thermoregulate better, so they're able to take those cold temperatures a lot better because there's less surface area per mass with those larger clusters. So you want to make sure that this is the time of the year to cut those losses. You know, a strong hive that makes it through the winter is better than two weak hives that don't make it through the winter, and you can always recover those losses in the spring through splits. So let's take a look and see what we're doing here in the apiary today. Okay, we're ready to get into this hive and kind of see what's going on. And I wanted to point out a few things before we really get into the hive. First thing I want to point out is that we are in the middle of robbing season right now. This is when colonies that may not be super strong are really subjected to a lot of pressure from stronger colonies to rob them of their honey. And during this time of the year, you'll see this manifest in front of your colonies where you have these huge plumes of bees that are just trying to get their way into a colony to steal all of those resources. One of the things that we use in the apiary is what you see right here. This is a robbing screen. It allows for the bees to come in and out. It allows for the bottom entrance to be completely open still, but basically constricts the areas that bees can enter and exit. So that's what we use on some of our hives. And what this hive is a good example of is this hive is a really good example of a hive that I think I can get through the winter with no problems, but is a little bit light on feed. So I put the robbing screen to ensure that we don't have any of these resources being stolen. But at the same time, you can see this is 4 boxes deep. This is an 8-frame medium, and typically a four boxes deep that are completely backfilled with honey, this will get me through the winter no problem. This top box up here, you can see the handhold is upside down, and the reason that I do that is so that when I walk into the apiary, I can see which colonies have a feeder on top, and this colony is actually being fed through a feeder on top. And I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making sure I'm queen right. 2, I'm going to refill this feeder, and 3, I'm going to check on the progress of this hive to make sure that is this effort of going into feeding actually paying off in terms of backfilling and in some cases drawing new comb and filling that out with this resource that we're adding. So let's take a look and see what's going on. You can see I have a top entrance on here. That is acting as a spacer right now for my internal feeders. Now what I do for internal feeders is essentially I use a setup to where we just have mason jars on top. Let me take this camera right here and I'm going to bring you over close. And you can see in this setup, so you can see in this setup, I have 2 mason jars that are literally just sitting right on top of the bars. And I'm going to refill those, and I'm going to actually add probably another box or another jar or so just to add a little more volume. So what I'm looking for as I'm going through this colony is I'm looking to see what they've actually been doing. So the last time I was in here, I thought, you know, maybe I can feed this thing and get them to draw out a little bit more comb to store honey. And that doesn't look like that's panned out. This box is still empty. So I'm going to take these feeders off, and what I'm going to do at this point in the season, so this was, I've been feeding these for the last couple weeks. So at this point in the season, I've really got to just decide, do I think this can actually make it through or not? So I can tell you this box is empty. So we're going to go and take that box off completely. Now what I can see here is in my third box, I have 2 frames of bees with comb drawn out, and it looks like it's full of honey on 3 frames. That's not a lot right here. And when I lift this up from the back, what I can tell you is that this whole colony probably weighs about 100 pounds, so it's very light. So what we're going to end up doing with this colony is I'm going to combine it with another colony. Now, one of the things that I do as part of my just normal practice is I generally have a couple small colonies going all season long that are there for one reason primarily, and that's queens. And they're basically just small colonies that I keep on hand for mated queens. So if I have a queen that dies out, I have a colony that I know I can grab a queen from. This colony that I use for this is it's a 10 frame deep box that is divided into 3 sections, so you can fit 3 frames, or you can fit three frame nukes in this 10 frame box. So I have 3 queens on hand all the time. In addition, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take those full frames of resources and give them to another colony. Now in this situation, this is a little bit different because I can't do that because those are on deep frames, and that's one of the limitations of that approach when I get to this time of the season. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to figure out what colonies in this apiary are kind of in this same situation where I've got 2 full boxes of bees down here, a couple frames of bees up here. There's not nearly enough feed to get through the winter with this colony, but if I combine it with another colony, likely of the same size, I'm going to have one really good sized colony with plenty of resources to get through the winter. So as I go through this apiary today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking out for those colonies. Now I can tell you from the colonies I've already gone through, those colonies have already been combined. So the colonies in these back 2 rows are already ready to go. And what I like to do is I generally like to do this row by row. So I'll go through this row. This row is all new colonies from this year. So I know that within this row, I may have another colony that's in a similar situation. And I'm just going to take a piece of newspaper, put it over top of this, and combine the 2. Now I'm going to make sure that this is queen right before I do that combination. And if it is queen right, and I have 2 queen right colonies that I'm going to be combining, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little queen cage right here, and I'm going to take that queen from the colony that I'm going to combine with this one, and I'm going to put her in here. And then I'm going to put her into a banker colony where she's just going to hang out until I find another colony that might be queenless. You don't have to pinch your queens when you're doing combinations. The thing I like to do is I like to keep them on hand because invariably I may run into, out of these 50 hives, another colony that needs a mated queen right now. And I can, if I have it, I can offer it to them. And that's a really good thing to have on hand this time of the season, because most of the time you're gonna have difficulty finding mated queens this time of the year if you go queenless in a colony. So just a little bit of advice there. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go through this and finish up checking if we're queen right. And if so, then I'm just going to note that in my notebook. And once I find another colony that's kind of in a similar situation, I'll go ahead and combine those 2. So let's see how we're doing in here as far as being queen right. You can see a nice big full box of bees. So there's about 16, there's probably about 19 frames of bees in here. And so for those of you that have been asking about size, this is a small colony, in my opinion, for getting through the winter. Once this is all clustered up, you're talking about the size of a basketball. Now, if this was all floor to ceiling honey, I might be able to get this colony through the winter, but generally I like to put my bees into winter in 8 frame equipment with at least 4 boxes deep. So that's what I'm kind of shooting for in my situation. Let me come around to this side so that you all can see. All right. So let's see what we got going on here. I can see that a lot of this is filled with honey, which is great. Like I said, I felt probably about 100 pounds, maybe a little bit more of honey on this. Again, you know, that's something that just with experience, I've given you the calculations, the kind of rough calculations to determine if you've got enough honey on. But again, you know, with experience, you can generally pick up the back of these and determine if you've got enough weight or not. You kind of know what that weight feels like. A couple full frames of honey. All right, so now we're into brood. I can tell that this is brood just by the lightness of the frame. All right, so looking in here to see what's going on. What I can see is that the bees are starting to backfill the brood chamber, which is good. We want them to do that at this point in the season. No sign of eggs or queen on this frame. So we're going to go to the next frame. Full frame of brood right there. Capped brood, beautiful pattern. Very, very strong brood frame. And who are those in that brood frame right now? Those are our winter bees. So those are really, really important to our colony. All right, so looking on the back here, the light's not the best, but I can see eggs in there. So we've got eggs in here. We are queen right. Next frame is a full frame of brood, just like this one. So our winter bees are being put on right now. Really, really important to be able to determine that we've got a queen right colony here that is literally, you know, it's about 10 frames away from being a full colony. About 10 frames away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue feeding this right now. But like I said, what I'm going to be doing during today is I'm going to keep my eye out for a colony that might be a good match for this, meaning that it's about the same size as this colony. This is right on the border. Like if I have another, and here's another strategy. So if I get through today and I find that I don't have much in the way of other colonies that are this size, kind of on the weaker side of decent, what I will likely do, because this is a good sized colony bee-wise, it's just light on resources. What I may do is I've got some of my monster colonies up front that still have honey on them that I was going to harvest for fall honey, and I may take a box of that honey and just put it right on top of this. And then I've solved my resource issue. Like I said, I like to be 4 boxes deep of honey going into the winter. And that in that situation, if I'm able to take from another really strong colony and put it on this colony, then I won't combine this with another colony. So that's another option. So I may combine this with another colony, or I may just add more honey to this. I can tell you from our last evaluation here, and let me grab my notebook here. It's always important to keep notes. This is Hive N November 23. So I go to my notebook. Very important to keep notes. This is one of the most important reasons to keep notes, is so that you can reference things. And what I can tell you from this colony right here is that over the course of the season, this has looked pretty darn good. This is a blue polline queen, meaning that it's got a blue back color on its thorax, and which is a varroa sensitive hygienic queen. What I can tell you is over the course of the season, we had one issue in late July where we had a mite count of 12 per 300. Since then, our last mite count was 822. We had 1 mite per 300. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more last check on this as far as alcohol wash. And again, you guys have seen this, so I'm not going to absorb this video with that. But I'm going to go ahead and do an alcohol wash on this, see what it looks like, and if it does need a treatment, I still have time to get a formic acid treatment on before the end of the season and before these winter bees hatch out. So depending on what those tell me, I will or will not do this. Now I can tell you with these blue polline queens over the course of the season, what I can tell you is that with the ones that I've already done checks on in the last couple days, most of them have had very low numbers. And in fact, I've had none that were even close to the threshold. I think the highest number I've had so far with these polline queens on this round of checks has been 3 mites per 300. So we're doing pretty good there. And again, that's something we monitor every single month when we come out. So it's good to have that information to reference during something like this. All right, so got to do the mite check. All right, folks, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the mite check, and again, we'll move on into some other hives and I'll show you some stuff that's going on there. So I just opened this hive and I wanted to kind of give you an idea what a really strong hive looks like this time of the year. So this colony right here, we harvested about, I want to say it was about 75 pounds of honey off of. And then we put those wet supers back on. This top box was entirely harvested right here. The bottom 3 boxes, you can see this is this is all 10 frame equipment. Deep on the bottom, 2 mediums, and then this medium on top here. The cluster itself, last time we checked, we had about 40 frames of bees. We still have about 40 frames of bees this time of the year, so we know we've got a good, robust population of honeybees. Let's see what we're doing on weight. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this up from the back. Oh my gosh, it's a very heavy colony. So just by lifting up from that back, I can tell there's a lot of weight on this. What I'm going to do is kind of like one of these final checks of the season. We're going to go through this. Again, we're going to check if we're queen right. We're going to do our final varroa mite count for the season. And then we're going to determine if we're going to do any last-minute treatments with formic acid. Overall, this colony should be just fine, just looking at our notes and just verifying the weight on this. Last time this had a treatment was the beginning of August is the last time it had a treatment. So it's been relatively soon since that last treatment. This is a pole line, so Varroa sensitive hygienic colony. So we would anticipate that, like we've seen on a lot of the other pole line colonies, that the mite counts won't be too high right now. So let's take a look and see what we've got going on. So this, again, was a super we had harvested. I can see, just by looking down, it's really only these last 2 frames that are not filled here in this box. Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's a heavy box. All right, so down into the next box. I might have brood in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and take a peek and see where she's kind of at and see what we got going on in this particular box. Let me come around. Well, started from this side. I'll go around on the other side for the next one. You can see that's a honey frame, some pollen on there. And then this next frame was a brood frame, it looks like. That is now being backfilled. So this is all backfilling. There's some pollen still in there, but a lot of backfilling, which is what we want this time of the season. And see this frame right here? It's got some pollen in there, actually quite a bit of pollen, but everything else is backfilled with nectar. So this was a brood area of the brood chamber. I can tell just by the shape of the areas that are being filled. Again, backfilling, backfilling. There's a lot of pollen in this particular box. A lot of backfilling. So all of these frames are being backfilled right now. There is no brood up in here anymore. So that brood cluster, again, beginning after the summer solstice, starts to contract. So we start to see less bees being put on after that summer solstice. All right, so let's go into the next box. All right, the next box. So what I can see in this box is that we've actually got some frames that they've missed. So these outside frames are completely empty. I'll show you. Totally empty. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and kind of organize this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these empty frames out and I'm going to fill this area with honey frames. This frame is drawn, but it's unfilled. All right, so now we've got backfilled frame, backfilled frame, another backfilled frame, another backfilled frame. So this has all been backfilled. All right, so we're going to go down to the next box, see what's going on. I'll come back and reorganize this. First, want to verify their queen rate. All right, so we got some mite strips, old mite strips on here from our last treatment. Go ahead and take those off. That is about, I guess that's about maybe 2/3 of the way full. Let's see what we got going on down there. Oh, yeah, and that's what happens when propolis gets on old frames that have been used many years, is they just come right apart. All right. Boy, these are really tight coming out. You can see they're getting a little feisty right now, too. And what I think we may have here, we haven't seen any sign of a queen yet. On one of those frames when I was pulling it out, that's backfilling, I did notice what looked like a supersedure cell that was open and had been open for quite some time. So we may have a supersedure from our last mite treatment that may not have taken. And just honey. Lots of pollen. No eggs. No eggs. Now I know from my notes that this was a marked queen previously. She was a blue queen. So she should be pretty easy to pick out. Right now, what this looks like is it looks like we're queens. Right here, we can see another one. Torn down supersedure cell. That's the second one. Again, supersedure, generally when you see a supersedure, you don't see like, dozens of queen cells. It's usually just a few. And that's just because they're replacing the queen. There's a third one right there. So there we've got 3 old queen cells that were torn down. So likely what happened is that this queen was taken out by that mite treatment. And we are now in a queenless situation. So what are we going to do in this situation? Well, like I said earlier in the video, when we looked at that first colony back there, that was a colony that was a little light on resources. This colony actually has quite a bit of honey in it. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take all the honey I need to make that other colony filled out for the winter. I'm going to give it to that. And then I'm going to hang on to the rest of this for another colony that's likely going to need a boost here. This is all 10 frame deep equipment. That's all medium equipment. So I can use both of these to support both deep colonies and medium colonies that I have in here. So although this seems like a bad situation, we've got a colony that's queenless this late in the year. This is going to give a much needed resource boost to some of our other colonies. So again, cutting our losses right now. We don't need a queenless colony going through the winter. This is a great opportunity to support those other colonies. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and start dividing up these resources between some colonies that need a little boost. So that's another solution you can have for colonies that are weak this time of the year, or queenless in this case, this time of the year. All right, so we're back to our colony that we had originally said was queen right, was looking good, but just was a little light on resources. What I've done is I've taken out the empty frames on this side of this box. This is the top box that has honey in it in this colony, so it's the third box up. Ideally, I want that box full and one more box is what I like to shoot for. So you can see these 4 frames have honey in them. This frame has a completely capped frame on one side, drawing on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and put that to the outside. And the other side of this has the same situation where they are starting to cap some honey and they're starting to draw a little bit on that side. So we'll go ahead and leave those to the outside. These other 2 frames that are in here, these frames are completely full, so we're totally good with those, and I'll go ahead and just leave those in the middle. Ideally, what you want when you're consolidating these resources is you want to make sure that everything is full honey. So the box below this is totally full honey with a little bit of brood in there. They're currently backfilling that area as the brood hatches, and we're going to go ahead and take the frames from that queenless colony and start adding full honey frames into this. Again, this colony is good enough size-wise. It's touching on 20 frames of bees, maybe 19. So it could make it through the winter. It just needs enough food to do it. And so that's what we're trying to augment here, is that they just didn't get enough food on themselves this season, even with some feeding in the fall. And we're just going to go ahead and augment that. So you hang tight. I'm going to go grab our box here of additional resources and bring that over. All right, let's go ahead and set that down. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull from this box whatever I want to make this colony right. Okay, so this frame right here, mostly honey, has a little bit of area where it's been backfilled. This was a brood frame at one point. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side. That's a candidate. This one as well. So this was a brood frame, but it's completely backfilled, getting ready to be capped. I'm going to go ahead and put that right on the outside of those capped frames. Another one, brood frame, that is totally backfilled but unkept. We'll put that on the other side. Next brood frame, totally backfilled, getting ready to cap. We're going to go ahead and put that one on the other side. Tighten that up a little bit there. Another frame was a brood frame, totally backfilled, getting ready to get capped. We'll go ahead and put that on that side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we just took this colony that only had 4 full honey frames up here and added a whole nother set. So now this entire box, within the next week, this should be capped off. And now we have an entire box of resources right above that cluster. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take another box, another empty box, I'm going to load it on here, and I'm going to start filling that one with frames as well. And what's going to end up with is, from that one colony that was queenless, we have now made another colony completely full of enough resources to get through winter, and they get a little bit more bees in here as well. So we're also adding some bees from the other colony in this process. So this is a really good situation here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our empty box. Here's our empty box, and now we're going to make this box 4 boxes deep of resources. What's going to happen is now these bees can really focus on just backfilling that brood chamber. This one, almost completely full, not quite. I'm going to set that just to the outside of the center. And then we had that other frame that we took out initially that is almost completely backfilled, but still not quite. So we're going to go ahead and put that right to the offset of the center. I like to do it so that basically we're in a situation where they're working from the inside out. But like I said, most of those bottom frames that we are in that box before, those are all just about ready to be capped. This next box here is not. So they'll still work on this a little bit. I'm going to bring you up just a hair here so that you're not staring at the side of that box. All right, so let's go ahead and grab some more resources. All right, so the other frames in this box are primarily just drawn wax. So we're going to go ahead and leave those. Let's go get another box. All right, again, a box from our donor colony. We're just stealing honey. Feed our colony here that is nice and queen right. All right, good frame of honey there. Lots of room to store on there. We're going to go ahead and put that on the outside of this. So what I'm giving them is all drawn wax that also has a lot of honey in it. So there's still a little bit of room for them to store honey in here. That back frame's not very filled out. That is mostly pollen on that. All right, some nectar there. Nectar there. Just about capped nectar. Same situation, just about capped. Come on. And a completely capped frame here. Go ahead and, I'm going to put that right in the center. You can see that there. All right, so now we have probably added about 70 pounds of honey to this colony. And now, a colony that when we went here the first time and picked this up was too light. Oh my gosh, I can barely get it off the concrete block here. So now this colony is in really good shape for winter. I'm going to go ahead and keep feeding it though. I want them to fill out this entire box, and there's still a little bit of room in there. So we're going to go ahead and throw our feeder box back on. But now this colony went from being in, you know, oh, I'm going to have to combine this with another colony or something like that, to this colony's in good shape now. This colony's ready to make it through the winter. All right, folks, so let's take a look at some of our other colonies. All right, as we continue to move through these hives, here we're at November 19. Take a look at our notes and see what we can expect in here. I can't tell just from the orientation of the top box, because I flip my boxes over when they have feeders in them, that the top one has an in-box feeder on it. I can see here that last time we checked on this on 8/22, we had a queen right colony with 20 frames of bees, and we had put a Formic Pro treatment on because it had 12 mites per 300 at that time. So we'll be taking off that mite treatment now and going and checking to see everything is okay. So let's see what we got going on. So we have several different styles of feeders here that I use in the apiary. You saw that I was using mason jars in some of these. I did at one point buy a few of these bucket feeders as well. We had purchased some for Michigan State University Extension, and I went ahead and bought some as well. These are pretty good. They're gallon buckets. They're from Better Bee. They do work pretty darn good. I have just over the years decided to go to mason jars. It's just a lot easier to get access to them and things like that. So we'll go ahead and refill that and put that back on once we're done here. That's been completely gone through. What I can see here is that we've got an empty box up here. So this is actually a colony that I have been managing as a single deep all season long, which has been fun. Just trying to do some experimentation. That's how they do it down at University of Guelph. So you can see here we've got 10 frames of bees in the bottom, and we've got about 4 frames of bees on the top. Not big enough to be able to get through winter. In my opinion, I don't like to see colonies this small. What this colony needs is another full box of honey on it. This one is about halfway filled out right now. So we'll keep feeding this, but ideally what will end up happening is one of these other colonies is probably well situated to be able to combine with this. So we'll probably end up combining this colony as well. This was a real late season colonies. I've got 5 of these colonies that I played with this season, managing as single deeps. And yeah, I think it went all right, but not something I'd probably do again, but just some experimentation. But I'll likely end up combining this with another colony. Let's go ahead and check just to make sure, because we did do a Formic treatment on this. Now, please note there was a feeder on here. That feeder went on after the 14-day treatment was over. However, I didn't pull the treatment out of here because you don't have to actually pull the treatment out once it's complete. Normally, I could just do that on my next inspection. And then pull that treatment off. Pull that treatment off. All right, so let's see what we got going on in this fruit shaker. These are a little feisty today. It is robbing season, and they tend to get a little more tough to deal with during this time of the season. Now, normally mid-season, I'm happy to just wear a veil and be out here in a t-shirt. Not this time of the year. No matter how delicate and gentle you are with your bees this time of the year, they are going to be very, very defensive during this portion of the year for their resources. So that's what you see going on here today. Full frame of honey. It's not quite capped yet. Frame they're filling with honey. All honey. Honey, honey. Looked like that might have had brood on it at one point. It's being backfilled. All right, we got a brood frame here. Lots of eggs on this frame. Lots of eggs on the back of the frame. So we're still queen right. Colony's still a little small, but like I said, we've been doing this as a single deep here. Managing this space as a single deep. So the idea here is that we just want to get this whole colony to backfill. this entire box right now. So ideally, I'd like to see this deep right here filled out completely, and the box above it filled out completely. That'd give me enough honey to feel comfortable I'd be able to get through the winter. Because these deep boxes, once they're full, are about 90 pounds, 80 or 90 pounds of honey. And so that's being backfilled nicely. They're still putting on winter bees. We didn't lose our queen during the treatment, so we're going to go ahead and put this back together and keep feeding heavy. Now you can see just from this arrangement, this is about 3 mediums worth of space, top to bottom. But we're looking at a total of, if we were to get these 2 boxes filled out, a total of 20 frames filled out. So just to put that in context, 3 mediums in 8 frame equipment is about 24 frames. That's about what this is equal to, is about 24, well, I would say about 30 medium frames because you got that deep box there. So we're about 30 medium frames right here. So if I get this totally filled out, it's like basically having about 4 mediums, 8 frame mediums worth of resources. So I'd be satisfied if this completely got filled out this season with overwintering this, just in the size it is. So a full deep box and a medium. You know, it all comes down to how many resources there are in the colony, and essentially what we're going for is weight. So that's what we're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. I'm going to leave this box off that was on top of it because they're not doing anything with it. So we're going to go ahead and pull that off. I'm going to put that feeder right on top of this. So I'm going to go fill my feeder and I'll bring you all right back. All right, so I got my bucket feeder filled. With these bucket feeders, the big thing you got to make sure is that the vacuum sets before you dump this into your colony, because you can really get the colony quite wet with this. So you can see that initial run out, and then eventually it will catch vacuum and just start dripping. There we are. So now we're going to go ahead and put that right in on top of our bees here. I put this right on top of the frames, so there's nothing in between this and the frames, which is fine. That's how I install all my internal feeders. You can install them on top of an inner cover as well. I just don't, mainly because I don't have a ton of inner covers, because a lot of my equipment is migratory tops. So in this case it's not, but that's how we always put it. All right, so this colony is all ready to go. We'll keep feeding this, and like I said, if they fill out these 2 boxes, we'll be set to go for winter with this setup.